All right. Hello. I apologize I am late today, but here we are. Another exciting episode of the Taoist Online Taoism Lessons. My name is Patrick Stewart, and I am the chief editor, and co-founder of the Taoist Online, which is a publication over on medium.com. We publish about a dozen spiritual, religious, or philosophical articles every single day of all different religions and faiths and philosophical ideas and spiritualities. It's just a great place to share your own ideas and learn from others. So every Sunday, I get together on YouTube and stream a lesson to kind of guide us through our sessions. I use a book called 365 Tao by Deng Ming-Dao, which if you're watching the video on YouTube, you'll see I'm holding it up right now. It's by a very wise individual named Deng Ming-Dao. It's meant to be a daily devotional so that every day you read one of the very short poems and chapters, and then you meditate on it. But instead, I'm going to discuss it out loud. And I hope you enjoy it. We are on chapter 66 right now. For those of you who may not know what Taoism is about 2,500 years old. It is an ancient philosophy religion from the China area. It teaches you to get in line with harmony, in harmony with nature, the driving force of the universe, which we call Tao, or the Tao. Lesson number one about the Tao is you can't explain really what the Tao is because words are a human construct. Therefore, you have to experience what the Tao is rather than just talk about it. But we're going to do our best. We're going to talk about it here for about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and we'll go from there. So I appreciate you stopping by today, and let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 66 is called Cycles. Dawn is a shimmering of the horizon. Dusk is a settling of the sky. Dawn and dusk together represent the measure of a day. When the sun rises, the moon sets. When the moon rises, the sun sets. This represents the cycle of existence. For without such an alternation, the power of the universe could not be generated. When the sun reaches its zenith, it will inevitably begin its descent towards its nadir. All events, including our own plans and activities, follow the same pattern. It is wisdom to know the cycles of life and where any particular circumstance that we are involved in stands on the curve. If we want to perpetuate something, we should join it to new growth to compound our progress. If we want to destroy something, we need only lead it to its extreme, for all things decline after their zenith. All too often, people express uncertainty about where they stand in life. It's important to examine both the short range and the long range. If you want to go far in a decade, you have to go far each year. If you want to go far each year, you have to make sure that you do something significant each day. Use the cycles of life to establish a measure to your life, and then arrange your plans according to the units that you have chosen. Then there will be no fear of not knowing your own progress. All right. So cycles. If I had a picture, I would show you the yin yang, which is not around me right now, but I think everybody knows what a yin yang looks like. The white turns into black, and the black turns into white. There's a little bit of white inside the black and a little bit of black inside the white. And it's never changing. It always cycles. It always spins. Most of the time when you see a yin yang symbol, it's just static, right? It's on a t-shirt or it's on paper, or maybe someone's got it on a t-shirt. But in reality, the yin yang moves, right? The yin yang is supposed to be constantly rotating, but it's hard to do that on paper. But it's important that it moves because all things in the universe cycle. It's one of the key ideas behind Taoism, actually. First, you did not exist, then, and now you exist, and then soon, or soon enough, you will not exist again. The universe did not exist, and then it exists. A star did not exist, and then, a bunch of dust and atoms get together and they form a star. That star uses up all of its energy and explodes, and then that dust cloud forms back together to make a new star, and that explodes, and on and on and on and on and on for trillions and trillions of years. Taoists even believe, and I would believe, that eventually the universe will, in some way, shape, or form, not exist, and then it will start over and exist again. All things will, because everything in nature that we have observed does this pattern. Whether it's plants or animals, they are not here, and then they are born, and then that material goes into the ground, and then that becomes more plants and life. It just never seems to end. And even looking less cosmically and looking at our emotional states, we're happy, and then we're sad, and then we're happy again. Or we are angry, and then we're not angry, and then we become angry again. I feel like a lot of philosophies, they want you to somehow become this emotionless husk of a human, where you just run around and like nothing affects you, right? Where you can just kind of be stoic, or you can be, like a Vulcan on Star Trek, where you just don't have emotions and everything is logic all the time and nothing phases you. But that's not human. I don't know about you guys, but like I get angry. I live in 2023 and I have children and, family and a job and multiple jobs actually. And it just happens, right? For no reason sometimes. It's not that anything happened. Maybe I'm tired, or I had a hard day and I'm just frustrated and I'm angry and I get short-tempered. And, one of the things about Taoism is it teaches you that those kind of vicious cycles are normal. Like they are a part of what makes you alive and a human being. And rather than try to teach you to not have them, which would be an unnatural exercise and cause more disharmony, Taoism will teach you to accept those parts of yourself that maybe you are uncomfortable with, and learn to feel those feelings and then let them flow outside of you naturally, right? I had this analogy. I was writing about this the other day, where you have to pretend like your body is like water, where if you drop something in water, it makes a big impact, right, when it hits, and then slowly it sinks to the bottom. And if there was no bottom, right, then if it was just water floating in air, it would hit the top, make a big impact. It would flow slowly through the water and then drop out the bottom, right? Just like the food you eat, right? Kind of a gross example, but you put the food in your mouth, goes in, you take what you need from it, and then you release all the stuff you don't want, right? That's how your emotions that's how your emotions work naturally, right? Something awful happens to you and you get angry and you get frustrated and you have to think about those consequences and maybe you could learn something from the experience and then you let it go, right? Someone told me once that worrying about the past is called regret. Worrying about the future is anxiety. So only think about now and today. And if you can live in that present moment, then I think you'd be surprised how little things will throw you off track. How few times you'll be anxious or unhappy or sad. A lot of our negative emotions really come from that concern for things we can't control. Whether we're worrying about tomorrow or we're worried about or we are regretful about yesterday. If we can let go of both of those concepts and just focus on what we need to do now, you'll find that we have plenty of time to do it and we can get it done. We can get it all done. And that's really, to get a side tangent here, if we bring it back to cycles, that's what it is, right? It's allowing things to flow naturally at a time in their own time. Cycles. All right. Chapter 67, returning. Angels against lavender sky, flung far across heaven's vault. Oh, angels. Angels against lavender sky, flung far across heaven's vault. Unfettered swallows circle back to the nest. Swallows are famous for their daring speed and the unpredictable paths that they take in flight. Yet no matter how far they fly, they circle back to their nests. The idea of returning is significant for all of us. We must work, explore, travel, and make our achievements in life. No matter how much we strain and how wide we wander, we all need some lodestone, some center from which to operate. For some of us, this is a place, a home. For others, it is merely withdrawal into our own hearts. Followers of Tao believe that there is a core spirit to which each of us should return. This core spirit is increasingly obscured by our own thoughts and the complexity of civilization. All education, while a necessary evil, is a stain upon the primal soul. Therefore, returning is a process of simplification that throws off the unnecessary problems of socialization. One gradually peels back the layers and makes one's way back to the unsullied, pure inner person. The time to do this is long, and one needs a great deal of guidance and self-cultivation to achieve it. But until one returns to the natural state, one cannot truly hope to be one with Tao. So, Chapter 67 goes back to what we were talking about in 66, which is cycles. Finding that pure center which to stand on, to return to. So if we all get angry and then we go back, like what are we going back to? Like where's your spiritual home, right? Where is the ground you're supposed to stand on? Like, where's your rock? And to reach that, you really need to think about it and self-cultivate. So self-cultivation, let's talk about that for a little bit. Everyone knows what meditation is. And I think most people understand the definition of the word mindful, right? Be mindful of your actions. Be mindful of who you are. So how do you do that, right? Like, how do you meditate? I remember a couple of years ago, before I started meditating, I thought meditation was where you sat in this room and, you turn off all the lights and you burn incense or whatever, you play with a little bell, and that was it. Like, that's how you meditate, and you just very quiet. And then I realized that I have 3 children and a job. And when do I find time to sit there alone? The answer is never. The answer is you don't get that, because it's 2023 and I'm an American, and that's how my life works. We're too busy all the time. I fill my days with as much activity as I humanly possibly can, and there's no way to just sit here and be quiet and think about things. So now what, right? What do I do if I can't sit still? Then how do I meditate? And in Taoism, we learn that self-cultivation, which is really I have always found it as a different way to say meditation, comes in many different forms. So the example I always use is, doing the dishes, or maybe it's folding laundry, or, some other activity like picking up the house when nobody's around. It's anything that you can really focus. And you ever just done things instinctively? Like, you ever just do things, you don't even really think about it? Like, you're driving to work, like your commute. You drive that same 10, 15, maybe 30 minutes, or drive so many times every single day that you feel like you could almost do it with your eyes closed. Don't drive with your eyes closed, but you could, right? It feels that kind of instinctiveness. That's really meditation, right? That is a moment of clarity when you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're simply existing in that moment. And maybe all your worries for just a brief minute or two go away, right? And that's the time to self-cultivate, right? When you can remove all the distractions from your life and just focus on what you're doing, that is self-cultivation. And the more you can put yourself into that mindset, the more you can release some of that negative energy or negative emotion. And when you breathe in new energy, you'll find that refreshing, right? And it's, like I said, it doesn't have to be just sitting still, right? You can do it really during anything. You could be walking around, reading a book, anything that causes you to really just focus. But that's what you're returning to, right? That is that natural state that you're trying to bring yourself back into. And here in chapter 67, it talks about the education system of not particularly the American education system or any one country's educational system. It's the education that all societies place on you. You have to get these jobs, you have to act a certain way in public, you need to sit a certain way, you need to wear certain clothes, you have to say certain words, and all these rules, right? All these rules that somebody somewhere sometime just made up, and they're not a natural they're not a natural place, right? Like, I don't believe evolution was like, hey, wear dresses, women, and hey, men, wear suits and ties all the time. Like, I don't think that was a natural occurrence. I think somebody was like, hey, we have to wear these all the time because I think they're nice. And then it happened, and it just got stuck. It's tradition. So when it talks about, kind of peeling away these layers of knowledge, that's really what it's talking about. It's realizing a lot of these human constructs are simply that. They're just human constructs. And in order to return to our more natural state, we have to realize they are what they are, and then stop living in them all the time. Or at least understand that the rules of our societies are simply agreed upon by societies. It's not who we are. I mean, when you're born, right, you're as pure and as natural as you're ever going to get, right? You haven't been affected by anything yet, right? You are purely 100% living in your natural state as a newborn baby. As you grow older, of course, you learn to do language, which is important, right? That is a naturally evolving capability. As we, it helps us to live longer and communicate and build societies and homes. And so that's a natural process. But then pretty quickly, it's like, hey, well, you need to sleep certain times of the day. You have to act certain ways when we're in public. Sit still, don't touch that. Don't ask those questions. Ask those questions privately. Don't touch that. All those things where we just almost instantly begin to kind of impart these social norms onto children. And it takes years of self-cultivation to peel these layers away, right? To return to who you are as a natural being of the universe. For another example, you ever look at like the space stuff? Like putting satellites in the sky, or going to the moon or Mars, and all these crazy scientific studies you always read about, and you're just like, did we have to spend $1 million on that study to learn something we already knew? Man, I'm trying to remember one I just read the other day where it was something like, scientists discover, people really are upset or something like that. And I was like, well, didn't we already know that? Like, how many times do we have to confirm the exact same thing over and over and over again? And how much money are we spending on this stuff? So it's that weird kind of human desire for just discovering things, constantly trying to reassure ourselves that certain things are the way they are. And it's just that knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's not knowledge to better yourself. Or to learn more about the world around. It's not going to help you any. It's just knowledge to say that you did it. And I think in Taoism, that's not approved of. I think, in Taoism, we want to be who we are. And doing that makes you happier. I think it makes you feel lighter. As you go throughout your day, you'll notice you don't worry as much, right? Because you're going to return to this place and you know where it is, right? It's like coming home at the end of the day. You can go out to your job and you're stressed out and whatever. And when you come home, don't you just feel more relaxed? Like you just, in your home, you sit into your couch, you turn on the TV, or you open up your phone, and you just return to that natural version of you. You're not talking to anyone. You just are who you are inside yourself. And that's returning. That's what it means to return to be who you are in Tao. All right. 68. Creativity. Storm breaks into pieces. Clouds charge the horizon. Revolving all the heavens generates all movement. Without movement, there could be nothing created in this universe. The revolving of the heavens can generate wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. The revolving of the earth enables us to have day and night, the very cycle of the weather, the seasons, and the growth of plants. Movement is responsible for creativity. Followers of Tao value initiative, but mere aggression is not enough. One needs creativity. This can mean the ability to solve problems, to think of unnatural strategies, or to compose poetry, music, and painting. In all these cases, one moves in concert with Tao, not by blind aping, but by giving intelligent counterpoint and harmony. Creativity does not mean the arbitrary making of something out of our cultural minds. Rather, it is spontaneous movement in tandem with Tao, a movement that will generate life and not misery for others. One has reached the ultimate levels of creativity when one has mastered skill so thoroughly that it can be forgotten. Look at heaven and earth. Do they think about creating the weather, the seasons, and the cycles of growing? They only go on revolving according to their nature, and the rest is generated without any thought or work on their part. This is truly effortless action and is considered the highest skill that a follower of Tao can attain. Okay, so in this book, Deng Ming-Dao, the author, tries to not use Taoist terms in order to make it easier to understand and comprehend. What he's getting at here in chapter 68 is a Taoist term called Wu Wei. The key to that, Wu Wei is a Chinese term that means effortless action, which is, of course, what he said here at the very end. This is truly effortless action. Yes, which is Wu Wei. And it is a skill. It's a skill that as a Taoist, you attempt to live your life in this action, right? And it's believed that if you self-cultivate enough, that you can. This is an internal place of being that you can live every day inside of. So my favorite example for Wu Wei is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, probably one of the best basketball players to have ever lived. Obviously still alive, but no longer playing professional basketball here in the United States. He gave an interview once where he was asked, how do you do these things? Like, how are you so skilled? Like, when you're on that court, are you thinking, hey, I'm going to, drive the ball to the hoop over here? Like, how do you do these? How do you do this? And he said something that most professional people, whether they're a basketball player or an athlete, or maybe they're a painter or a composer, or even a writer, he said that it just happens. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't really contemplate it. It's just spontaneous action. And it feels effortless, right? It feels like he wasn't even trying sometimes. It just happens. That is Wu Wei, right? He is living spontaneously in that moment. He didn't think about it. He didn't plan it. He just has that skill at that moment to do these incredible things. And it's not that he didn't have to work to get there. I mean, I'm sure Michael Jordan worked extremely hard to be as talented as he was. Nobody's born with a basketball in their hands, right? Nobody just is a genius athlete or painter. You can get there at a very young age, but everyone starts somewhere, right? Everyone has to be taught the notes on a keyboard at some point, or, how to hold a paintbrush, or how to type, or how to write, right? These skills are hard and they're difficult, but there's something interesting happening when it just flows out of you. I'm a musician. I grew up playing drums and piano. There are times where you just improvise those notes, whether you're composing or you're playing with a band. or, let's say you're in a jazz band, right? And you're doing a solo. Most solos are not planned out. They just, especially when you're writing them, you just play, and it comes out of you and you can't explain it. You don't really know where those notes came from, but your whole body worked in unison to play a series of notes, and it sounds great sometimes, right? Or what about when you're writing? I write almost every day now, and I can tell you the articles that seem to do the best are the articles that I just sat down and wrote. Like, where did that come from? I don't know. I can spend an hour writing an article from start to finish with very little changing, right? I mean, obviously spelling and grammar and maybe an edit here or there, but sometimes it just flows out. And those are the best ones because those came naturally from you. You didn't stress. You didn't force the creativity. The creativity just happened. And that is Wu Wei. That is a style of living your life in the moment at all times. A friend of mine, one of our editors, the Taoist Online, Nani, she created an advent calendar for mindfulness, and I'll try and remember to link that in the description. So every day there's a mindful task that you can do, or you can do it to your spouse, like I am. But that repetition of being mindful about what's going on and taking time out of your day, or even just a minute or two when you're going to the bathroom or whatever, that is practice, right? You're practicing living in the moment, right? Being mindful, Wu Wei, effortless action. It doesn't mean you're unskilled, right? It doesn't mean the action is not difficult, but it means that you've practiced that action so many times that it becomes instinctive. For example, breathing exercises when you self-cultivate. I used to I still do a breathing exercise called 4-7-8, where you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 7 counts, and you breathe slowly out for 8 counts. Not to be confused with seconds, because that's a long time, but just a fast kind of a count. I practiced it going to bed for almost 2 years. And now when I get stressed, it just instinctively comes to me to begin to breathe that practice. I'm working on a new breathing exercises called Taoist True Breathing, which is another long story, but it's a different form of breathing. And eventually, after enough practice, your body will begin to jump to these habits. And like a soldier, soldiers, we train to work based on instinct, right? You don't have time to stop and think when you're in battle. You just want those soldiers to go do, right? Just make it work. That is also Wu Wei, right? They have been trained to naturally do incredible tasks without thinking. So I hope that explains creativity in a Taoist sense. And you can live your life this way. It is believed that if you practice effortless action, if you put yourself there, if you cultivate enough, that eventually you can live your entire life in this flow state. I don't. I sure as hell don't. I've never met anyone who does this. Or who claims to do this. It's a goal, right? It's a place you aspire to be. And hey, maybe you'll make it. And if you do make it, let me know. Absolutely, let me know. Come contact me, and I've got questions for you. Okay, we're gonna move on. Excuse me. Okay, chapter 69, Illumination. The poem is very short on this one. The poem just says, Fire feeding on fire. Everyone understands that burning wood produces fire. But when fire feeds on fire, that is a rare condition that yields the greatest illumination. Two flames come together and yield light more magnificent than either could have given forth alone. In the case of community activity, this means that when one cooperates with others, the accomplishments are greater than what the individuals can do on their own. Such a situation requires a harmony that will generate ideas, inspiration, as well as momentum for growth and action. If the combinations occur properly, the result will be like fire upon fire and will illuminate the world. Sometimes the combination comes down to just two people. If two people join forces, neither sacrificing their individuality, but only lending their power to an endeavor, there will be a wonderful situation that will both benefit others and encourage greater growth in the two people as well. Fire feeding fire can also mean that swift exhaustion of all energies involved. One must be careful not to lose one's own personality in any joining. The idea is integration, not assimilation. No matter what can be achieved in joining with others, it is wise to remember that we each walk this path independently. The ultimate truth of the journey and its final rewards are still for each of us to face alone. As a musician, when I was in high school, I was in drumline. So in marching band, all the guys who walk around with drums hanging off them, we call that drumline. When we would practice, it was known that if all of us played simultaneously, but independently, right? So on different drums, if we all hit our drums at the exact same time, that wave of sound would be louder than if we all hit just slightly off of each other. The same thing is true with your voice. I was in choir in junior high and middle school, and I was in my musical theater class in high school. And we knew that if we sang in unison, then that would be stronger and louder than if we didn't sing well and all sang kind of independently from each other. Scientifically, the reason why that is, and again, in this chapter, they use the example of a candle, is that waves, whether they be sound waves or light waves, but just waves in general, propagate stronger. They reinforce each other when they're together, right? If they have disharmony, then those waves begin to cancel out some of the other wave. But if they're perfectly in tune with each other or aligned with each other, they will reinforce each other and that wave will propagate farther. And that's what he's getting at here with the candle as well. Light waves, if you put those two candles next to each other, they will actually be brighter than if you put them far apart from each other. You can get more light if they work in harmony. So let's break that down to human beings. If I have an idea and I want to bring this idea to people and help them, it's always going to go better if I have someone to help me. If we can work in unison with the same idea, that idea will move further throughout the world. For example, the Taoist Online was an idea I had in February, actually more like January. And I began writing, And I used this kind of online screen name as the Taoist Online, which I thought had a nice ring to it. Lo and behold, on the website medium.com, I made this publication mainly because I misunderstood the way publications work. I thought that the algorithm on that website, preferred an article inside the publication than outside the publication. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'll make one, and then it'll just be me, and the algorithm will help me out. And first of all, that's not true. But second of all, what I didn't expect was other people wanted to submit their articles under this banner. And lo and behold, the more people I got to publish under that name, the further reach that publication then had. And you reach this kind of viral effect where suddenly what started out as just me became hundreds and hundreds of people, of writers, and thousands of readers. And I was doing a kind of a year-end review this week, and I discovered that while Medium doesn't give us exact numbers, but if I extrapolate the numbers for the entire year, the Taoist Online has been read 1 million times. We've had 1 million views since February. And in minutes, we've had 1.6 million minutes of read time. That's 3 years. If you took each one of those minutes and laid them up back to back to back to back, it would take you 3 years to read that many 1.6 million minutes. So you always hear that cliche where, one person really can change the world and it only takes one person. And you're always like, what? Like, man, that's not for me. Like, yeah, maybe, but that's not going to be me, right? Like, I'm just some person sitting in some house, in some state, in some city, I'm just somebody online, one of billions of other people online, right? And a lot of times that's true, right? A lot of times you may be that kind of shadow, but it happens. It happened to me. It can happen to you. I'm not any better or wiser or more talented than anybody I know, really. I am not the best drummer. I'm not the best piano player. I think I'm okay, right? I think I'm educated, kind of. I went to school, but so did millions of other people. So I don't have any unique things about me. I just wanted to do a thing, and I did it. And it touched a nerve with several people, and then that propagated out because we worked together in unison, in harmony. And if we're together, then we really can change the world. It's true. It's absolutely true. All right. Chapter 70. Independence. The poem says, a solitary crane in winter snow needs no jewels. A single crane standing unconcerned in the falling snow is the very image of independence. It needs no one. It is secure in its environment, and it is capable of going through life alone. Its independence stems from self-sufficiency. It needs no clothing, no building, no wealth, no status. It is content, even glorious in its naked identity. So too with ourselves. There is no need for dazzling clothes, an impressive career, an awesome temple, nor a bejeweled master. What we want is something far beyond such externals. What facets of your personality are encumbrances? What personal aspects prevent you from being independent? These are the areas that will define your self-cultivation, for you must strive to stand alone. This doesn't mean that you won't ever join others, but you will do so as an individual who will cooperate just as much as is necessary. In this way, you will never be lost in a group, and you will never fear being alone. Historically speaking, there are stories of Taoists who kind of gave up civilization and they run out into the woods and they just live in the woods alone forever. And there's certainly a part of that in Taoist philosophy. As we see here, we should be comfortable, we should be independent and feel confident in that independence. That no matter what happens, we alone will stand strong in the storm. One of your goals of self-cultivation is to gain this confidence and this independence. That no matter what happens to anyone or anything around you, you are capable of being strong and being able to move on, no matter what. Resilient. Now, that doesn't mean you stay stiff as a board. It doesn't mean you don't bend, right? And things don't move you, but it does mean you survive. Think of a palm tree. You ever seen the video, or maybe you live close to a coast when a big storm or a hurricane comes off the water, and you always see those palm trees that they look like they're bending almost to touch the ground, right? So just 200-mile-an-hour wind, and those things are just flapping all over the place, and they're losing their leaves. But man, when that storm's over, they're still there. But then, I get storms where I live in North Texas, and we get, 80-mile-an-hour winds, and trees around my neighborhood just snap like sticks. We had a house about 2 or 3 blocks away about a year ago, and that whole tree just uprooted because it was so stiff and strong that the weak spot became its roots, and the whole tree toppled right over. Luckily, not on this guy's house. Luckily, it fell the other direction and fell into their front yard. But when we look at ourselves, it is important to remember that true independence does not mean you don't compromise. That's not independence. Independence and being grounded and well-rooted means that sometimes you bend to the wind. Sometimes you concede, right? You don't get your way all the time, like the oak tree that blew over, right? It tried to stand firm against that wind. Out. Dead tree. Smaller trees that are flexible, they survive. They live to see another day. So which tree was stronger? Is it the tree that died and was blown over? Or was it the bendy tree that lived? There's something to think about, right? And what about you? Are you strong? What does that mean to be strong? Are you the person who beats everyone over the head and you have to be right all the time? Or are you the person who sits there and smiles, shakes their head, thinks about it, right? In Taoism, we're taught to be the second type of person. When we are faced with a opinion that disagrees with our own, we should listen. We should take that into ourselves and think about it. It's important to remember that everybody has their own personal journey and that everybody is flowing through the Tao as the Tao has shown them, has moved them. And so you can't say that their path is incorrect while your path is the correct path, because the Tao moves through both of you equally. So when faced with an opinion or an idea that contradicts your own, do not be quick to judge, but instead understand that that is their desired path, natural, perhaps their natural path. There's no way to know. And you should listen to them no matter what it is, especially for us Americans as we get closer to the 2024 election. I think now more than ever, it is important to remain quiet sometimes and listen, truly listen, and ask why. Ask questions. Don't give opinions, just ask questions. And when you listen to them, when you really listen, I think you'll realize how similar they are. And once you learn where someone is coming from, then you can relate to them and you can humanize them instead of dehumanizing them through our differences. I think we'd be in a better place if we didn't call each other evil all the time, because true evil is rare, is very, very, very rare. In a Taoist sense, there is no evil and good. There is no good and bad. That's a whole nother story that doesn't really concern this chapter. But to get back to independence, it doesn't matter what's happening, doesn't matter what their opinion is. If you stay strong, and again, maybe we should rethink what strong means, you'll be okay. We'll move on. Everyone will. Okay, we're going to do one more. Chapter 71, Entertainment. The mind that turns ever outward will have no end to craving. Only the mind turned inward will find a still point of peace. It seems people never tire of seeking new thrills. They crave entertainment and they want newer, sharper experiences. Events do not even need to be actual. People are more than content with recreations, displays, and stimulating machines. Music must be amplified. A historic location must have museums, shops, and festivals. Life must have elaborate ceremonies with images, music, speaking, dining, and drinking. Followers of Tao regard all reality as being projections of our minds. All phenomena are subjective and relative. Therefore, it is folly to further entangle ourselves in confusion. True reality lies in withdrawal from the swirling variations of the outside world. It lies in looking within and then slowly peeling away the layers of subjectivity. What will remain is not a core of objectivity, but a kernel of truth that absorbs rather than reflects. If we enter into this kernel, our minds cease to continue their habits of creating stimulating realities, and we enter into a silence that feels perfect and whole. So this goes back to self-cultivation. And it's really talking about, when you live in Wu Wei, it's talking more about what that life is like and how to get there into that forever mindset. I like here at the end, like this last paragraph, which you can see in the video if you're watching the video on YouTube, is highlighted. True reality lies in withdrawal from the swirling variations of the outside world. Okay. When you meditate, when you self-cultivate, when you live in a way that nothing around you is going to topple you. Again, like I said, it doesn't mean you don't bend or lose sometimes, but when you live in that free-flowing state, in order to get there, you'll be surprised how many things you have to peel away from. Whether that's habits, stimulations, addictions, screens, substances, whatever it may be, traditions, right? Friends, lovers, could be anything. But I think you'll be surprised at what it takes to really let go and to live subjectively. I mentioned earlier that, there is no, in Taoism, there is no good and bad. There is simply living in harmony with Tao or living in disharmony with Tao. And you might ask yourself, well, how is that possible? Right? Like, I don't get that. So, 2 examples. My favorite example that I use is being in a river. So let's say you're in a boat and the boat topples over. So now you're just in this river, treading water. Well, you have a few choices of what to do. You can exert a lot of energy and try to swim against the current to quickly get to the shore. Now you're going to use a lot of energy and you're going to struggle to get to that shore. It doesn't mean you didn't get there, but man, you sure are tired. And, swimming against stream, you're going to get hit with sticks and rocks and, whatever else is floating in that river. Or your second option is you could flow with the river. You could conserve your energy and allow that river to carry you downstream and slowly, thoughtfully make your way to the side of the riverbank and crawl yourself out. Both of you, both options get you there, but one option leaves you battered and bruised, and the other option seems a lot nicer. It seems, kind of obvious that, I'd probably rather just let that river take me and move me and be calm and stay comfortable and get to the end whenever that river is going to take me there. I suppose in both cases you may drown, but in both cases you're going to make it out too. So that's what I mean by harmony or disharmony, right? You can struggle to fight to get where you want, or you can go with the Tao and still get where you want. The only difference is how much do you want to hurt? I think most people probably are going to choose the I'd rather not hurt option. As far as defining good and bad, that brings us to our second example. This is a story made up by Alan Watts. The story is called The Chinese Farmer. I'll see if I can retell it here. There once was a Chinese farmer, and he was a horse farmer. And one day his horse ran away. And at the end of the night, all the villagers came around and they said, well, isn't that too bad? And the farmer said, maybe. The next day, the horse came back, and with him, he brought 7 wild stallions. And the villagers came back at the end of the day and thought, oh, how great, how awesome is that? And the farmer said, maybe. Well, the next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of these new wild horses, and he got bucked off and broke his leg. And the villagers came around and they said, oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry. The farmer said, maybe. The next day, the conscription officers from the army came around, and they were conscripting and taking all the young men to go fight for their emperor in the war, except for the farmer's son, who had broken his leg the day before, was passed on. They didn't want him because he had a broken leg. At the end of the day, all those villagers came back around and they said, oh man, how great is that? Like your son didn't have to go. And he said, maybe. So you see, it's rather impossible to know what is good fortune or bad fortune. It's impossible to know what any action or any circumstance is good or bad, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So when you look at the world around us and you see actions that you might describe as bad or good, remember that those definitions are human constructs. And even when you take the argument to the extreme, because that's the first thing everyone always goes to, you know, what about murder? Again, you have harmony and disharmony, and then you have good and bad. Harmony and disharmony would be reality, and good and bad would be the subjective reality. And it's important to keep those two distinctions separate and not confuse them. At the end of the day, you never know, right? You just never know what the consequences of an action is truly going to be. You could be right 99% of the time, but you could be wrong. Think about it this way. 1 billion years ago, 4 billion years ago, a bunch of rocks and atoms came together to form planet Earth. If certain things don't happen in a certain way, you don't exist billions of years later. I mean, try to comprehend how many things have to go exactly the way they do in order for you to be listening right now in whatever place you are to my voice today. You can't. Trillions and trillions of actions have to occur exactly the way they do for you to be exactly the way you are, for me to be exactly the way I am, and for you to be listening right now. And if any one of those things change out of the last billion years, we could be very different. Maybe I'm born to another set of parents. Maybe you are. Maybe I don't exist. Maybe you don't exist. Or maybe maybe you act a different way. Maybe your hair is a different color. Maybe your house is different. There's just no way to understand all those things that have to come into place for this to happen. So when it says true reality lies in withdrawal from the swirling variations of the outside world, it lies in looking within and then slowly peeling away the layers of subjectivity. That's what it's getting at. It's getting at everything is subjective. Nobody knows what anything means. It's all made up. And the only thing that's real is what's inside yourself. And when you meditate and when you self-cultivate, whoever you are at that moment, that's who you really are. No rules, no societal traditions. That is truly you. And it should be a goal of ours to be that person all the time, because it is who Tao grew you to be, right? You grew inside Tao to be that person, and everything else tries to move you, disharmony. So by going back into harmony, again, as we started today off with cycles, back to harmony, back to who you are. You move away, come back. That palm tree bends in the wind, comes back when the wind is over. That is who you are. All right, that's going to be it. Next week, we're going to start on chapter 72, Discovery. But until then, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's chapters. You can find the Taoist Corner podcast on all major podcast platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, of course, on YouTube. Google Podcast is going away, so it's about to only be on you. It's about to become YouTube, but I appreciate it. We are here. I am here every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. If you want to subscribe to either one of those channels, please do. And don't forget to check us out on the Taoist Online. You will not regret it. Some amazing writers participating over there, all volunteer. They share just incredible journeys of themselves, thoughts and ideas, poems, artistry. It really is an incredible community over there, and I hope to see you there. So thank you so much. I will see you next Sunday. Have a good time.